And we are back on Open Line. We're so glad that you're joining us here on Open Line. If you are just tuning in, we're glad that you're with us right now. We've got about a half an hour to go on Open Line. We're answering your legal questions. And this show, I know we say it often, but it helps a lot of folks when you ask your questions, because not only does it help you, but it also helps the people that are wondering about similar things. So we are loving all the calls that we're getting tonight. Of course, our phones are always busy when Kevin Kennedy is with us. Attorney Kevin Kennedy from the Kennedy Law Firm, one of the top law firms in the state of Tennessee. Kevin, we're going back to the phone lines right now because we do want to try to get to as many of the calls as we can tonight. Wayne is on the line with us. Wayne, good evening. Do you have a question for Kevin?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead,
Wayne.
Yes, it's regarding ex-felon living with his wife in a home, and her being a gun carrier, having a gun carrier permit to have a weapon in the house. How are both of them protected from that, or what's the laws in Tennessee on it?
Well, if you have a gun permit, you have the ability to have that gun with you, and you have it in your home. I always like to tell people, if you ever shoot that pistol and it hits someone or hits something that it shouldn't have, are you liable for that? Yes. So I always tell people to be very, very careful. And of course, my family has handgun permits and we use them, and we hope we never have to use them, but that's just the way it is. Can you have it in your home? You don't even have to have a handgun permit to own a firearm in your home. But if you negligently left that gun loaded and a kid got a hold of it, you could take on some serious liability. If you also left it and a convicted felon got it, there's probably a good chance somebody's going to get sued. So firearms are wonderful. They must be kept with the most due care that there is. I always try to tell everyone, you remember, I represented a really bad killer one time. And he looked at me and he said, Kennedy, you know the difference between me and you? I said, hit it. He said, you'll hesitate before you pull the trigger, and I won't. And that has rung in my ears all these years. So, they all say at the handgun permit places, when I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6, and they all laugh. And what they really mean is that if you shot someone, can you get indicted? Yes. Do you have a right to self-defense? Yes. So you should get a lawyer immediately. Only do it absolutely when you have to, because you're going to get sued, and you'll probably get arrested. And then it's up to the court or the lawyers to get you out of it. But a man in Tennessee has the right to protect himself and his family.
All right. Well, thanks for that question, Wayne. Kevin, we've had a number of calls talking about, if you've been involved in a traffic accident, something like that, and as far as getting witnesses and getting information and those kinds of things. What about, though, if you are in an accident, or if it's a regular traffic stop and you're being questioned? What are your rights to answer, to not answer, what you do, what you don't say? How does someone know how to navigate that?
Okay, we start off with the premise, anything you say can be and will be used against you. We have another premise, Chuck. That is, when the police come up, they have these automatic audio recorders. Are they for your benefit, or are they for their benefit? I'm telling you, they're for their benefit. The insurance calls, you had a wreck, and they say, hey, Chuck, I understand you were in the wreck. Can you tell us what happened? Is that in your benefit, or is that in their benefit? So many of us don't want to complain right after the accident and say, well, I feel good. A week later, you got migraines, your arm's going to sleep. Well, they'll take that tape and use against you when you make a claim, and all your records, your medical records, come forward in the claim. And so be careful on what you say to your doctor. You want to be descriptive. Oh, I'm fine, doc. He can write in the records you're fine. Well, then the insurance company's begging for that. So when you're dealing with police, keep that in mind and be very careful, because individuals can turn it around right on you. You've heard horror stories when you were totally innocent, and the next thing you know, they're trying to blame something on you, get you in trouble. And there's 10 million laws out there, Chuck, that you don't even know. You know how you learn about them? when you got charged or when you got sued or when somebody used it against you.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, too, you're in a stressful situation. Often you're not really thinking as clearly as you normally would. So it's good to kind of anticipate what might be the right thing to say, not say in a stressful, inducing, situation like that.
So that's why it's important that we're being trained right now. So if we go into that situation, we understand what we're confronted with. You remember they said to Michael Jordan, he didn't make his first team. And so the next year he was up there and he did a wild shot and hit it. And they said, how about that? He said, give me 100 free throws. He said, well, why is that? He said, because in the clinch moments, you must deliver. So if you're caught yourself in that's the clinch moment, you must deliver. So what you're learning from me, tell your family around the breakfast table, all that, so that they will be prepared. And instead of saying, Daddy, I didn't know. Daddy, I did. And I said, well, what about Daddy's tried to teach and preach this to you for the last 5 years? Touche.
All right. Excellent. All right. As we go back to our lines on Open Line, James is on the phone with us. James, we're glad that you called this evening. What's your question for Kevin?
I wanted to know about the handgun permit and the handgun carry, open carry in Tennessee. Is it open carry with or without handguns or what? I mean, without permit or what?
Okay. Well, you're always open for interpretation. Do I have a right to transport a gun? I say yes. Well, then they're going to say you're carrying a gun with the intent to go armed. Well, that's a bunch of gray areas. Are you listening? If the gun is loaded and it's in close proximity, that is probably a good argument that you went with the intent. But of course, they're going to come up with you with this little recorder and you say, well, man, this is a rough part of town. This is a rough neighborhood. I had my gun for protection. Your own words just got you charged and probably would get you convicted. So you have a right to have those. I'll say this. There are some places, even in Tennessee, you can't carry that. You can't carry your handgun into the courts. You're not supposed to have it on educational grounds. There's a lot of exceptions to the exception. I want to make a good point. The Second Amendment to the Constitution says we have a right to bear arms. That's clear as a bell. But are you listening? This legislature has written state law and courts have had interpretation that there's limitations and restrictions, and it's been upheld. So what is right, what is wrong? You can stand on your constitutional rights, but again, they have been restricted from a city ordinance, a state law, a federal law. Excellent. Thank you for the question, and I gave you some food for thought.
Absolutely. And we're going to go back to Wayne. We were talking a little about the gun permit issue a little bit earlier. So Wayne has another question on that. So Wayne, go ahead. You're back on Open Line. Can you hear us, Wayne?
Yes, sir. Can the ex-felon get in trouble for living in a house with someone who's got a gun permit carrier?
As a general rule, yes, you would not be in trouble. If they are obeying the laws with their gun permit, yes, that would not get you in trouble. Now, if you intentionally knew that the kids are playing in the back room and that gun is there and they have left and they put it in their drawer and you had knowledge of that, you can take on some liability, my friend, because how are they even going to know that? Because when the police come in, they're going to say, well, did you know she had the gun back there? Yes, I knew. Well, did you know the children were back there? Yes. Did you know she didn't have a safety lock on it? Yes. Did you know anybody could get to it? All of your words would be used against you.
Okay. Once again, great to know, Wayne. We're glad that you called back on that. Another thing, Kevin, that I think a lot of people sometimes are it's a fuzzy area, and this is moving into the area of HOAs, homeowner associations, whether it's a condo association, a suburb, a division. When someone's a part of an HOA and the HOA is representing them and they have a problem with a neighbor over a situation, does someone in their own HOA, do they have rights of their own, or do they have to let the HOA speak for them and there's nothing that they can do?
No, I say everybody has your own rights. You could be limited because the HOA, you've already signed away certain of your rights when you joined that. When you bought that, you agreed to those kinds of things. But let me make this clear. Everybody has their rights. And you could have some rights and the HOA is not even advancing Well, you have a right to get a lawyer and write this person a letter. Say, dude, you cannot put a big dumpster in front of our $1 million house on this street. You just can't do it. And then you can call codes and whatnot. Remember, those homeowners associations have their rules, but you still can't violate the city codes.
All right, good to know. Now, as we're talking about, a lot of the things that people have been calling in tonight, whether it's wills, whether it's accidents, even trying to take on a lot of times, I think when you're looking at what we call kind of the big guys, you're talking about insurance companies,
Yes.
you're talking about hospitals.
Yes.
So how does the everyman take on, if they have a situation to go against the hospital, to go against, the insurance company? It just seems almost too big to tackle. What kind of advice do you have for them?
Well, when we see that trouble is breaking out, first off, I want to only do business with reputable people. If I knew these people are not reputable and others have had bad experience, I don't want to get in that arena and even, because it's a matter of time till they're going to hoodoo you. And so what I like to do is use my best judgment. I'll ask, I always have someone with me. I'll take another lawyer where we can discuss that and say, well, that's not what you said. And they'll say something. Well, we can write a letter back to them. This memorializes our meeting. I've said that earlier, wherein you told me that we would take the truck and have this done. And if the truck did not get fixed, well, that's not what you told us. If we ultimately end up in court, we've had a letter, we had another letter, you made representations. It's how do we prove it? Here's the documentation, here's the document. And realistically, when two reasonable lawyers set out at mediation, and the mediator says, guys, he's got you on this. Now, you can go fight, but you're going to lose this argument. Some of the lawyers say, that dog won't hunt. We create these theories and say, well, this is what we're going to do. You'll hear the mediator say, or the judge, Mr. Kennedy, that dog won't hunt. And then, of course, our lawyers are going to argue they won't hunt in normal circumstances, but this is why it will work in these circumstances. Your lawyer advances yours, their lawyer advances theirs. Always try to protect yourself. And if we see it's not good, we're in damage control. Try to get away, try to get out without losing a whole bunch more.
And that's because the lawyers, that's what they can help you with, that kind of knowledge. As you often say, Kevin, knowledge is power. All right, we are going to
Knowledge is power.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a short break right now. We have about 15 minutes left, so if you have one of those questions for Kevin Kennedy, get on the line with us now. You're watching Open Line.